They mocked my son's speech impediment during the debate finals, mimicking him behind his back. A girl sneered, "Does he even understand what he's saying?" Until the guest judge took off his mic and said, "That was me at 12 too." "I heard them, Mom," Mason said in the car, staring out the passenger window. His voice was flat, his words clipped. "They were making fun of me." I could hear them laughing while I was walking up to the podium. My heart dropped, hands tightening on the steering wheel. I glanced at him, his face washed in the orange glow of late afternoon. He didn't cry. That made it worse. "You did amazing," I told him, gently. "You did better than any of them ever could." He gave a small, tight smile, but I could see it. The wound was fresh. Deep. Not from the words themselves, but from who they came from, other kids his age. His peers. And because it confirmed something he always feared, that no matter how hard he worked to speak clearly, someone would always be waiting to laugh. I never imagined I'd be the kind of parent who posted on Reddit. But here I am, lying awake next to my husband who's already snoring, laptop dimmed low, typing because my chest feels too full. Not with anger anymore, though that's in there, but with something else. Something I think more parents need to hear. This story isn't just about bullies. It's about what it means to be proud of someone so deeply that your whole body aches for them. It's about the fine line between stepping in and stepping back. And it's about a moment, a single sentence from a stranger, that reached inside my son's pain and pulled something beautiful out. But to understand it, I need to go back to where it started. Back to a few years ago, when Mason first started struggling with his speech. He was 5 when I noticed the stutter. The pediatrician called it developmentally normal. But it didn't go away. By first grade, it had evolved into more than just hesitation. He tripped over multisyllabic words, substituted certain sounds, and developed a noticeable stammer under stress. We started speech therapy. 2 a week. Then 3. His therapist, a kind, balding man named Alan, was the first person outside our family who truly believed in Mason's potential. "He's got a rhythm to his speech," Alan would say. "He just needs space to find it." Mason was always more comfortable on the page. He loved reading, especially old books. Not the kind you'd expect a kid to carry. His favorite was Brave New World, which I caught him reading at 10, even if half of it went over his head. He never complained about therapy. He wanted to get better. But he also wanted to talk like everyone else. Blend in. Not be that kid who takes forever to finish a sentence. He once told me that when he prayed at night, he didn't ask to be popular or rich. He asked to talk like his words weren't scared. It broke me. When he asked to join the school's debate club in 6th grade, I almost said no. "It's a lot of pressure," I told him. "Debate is fast-paced. Competitive. People can be mean," he asked. I nodded. "I know," he said. "But if I don't try, I'll always be scared. I'm tired of being scared." So he joined. And week by week, I watched him change. His coach, Mr. Price, was a stern but fair man in his late 50s. Military haircut. Wore vests even in June. He wasn't overly warm, but he respected effort. And Mason? Mason gave effort in spades. He practiced every day. He rewrote speeches obsessively. He watched YouTube videos of great orators, mimicking their pacing, their pauses, their inflections. It became a nightly routine, after homework, before bed. Just us, timing him with a stopwatch and talking through stumbles. By February, he wasn't just on the team. He was one of their top speakers. I remember the night they qualified for the state finals. He came home with a certificate folded 4 times in his backpack, like it was something fragile. "They said I'm going to debate in Manhattan," he told me, face glowing. "In a real auditorium." I cried. Not big sobs, just the quiet, unexpected kind. Because it wasn't just that he was going to finals. It was that he believed he belonged there. We traveled to New York in early April. My husband stayed home with our younger daughter, and it was just Mason and me, our first trip, just the two of us. He wore his only blazer. We bought it for $19.99 from a thrift store 2 days before. I ironed it carefully in the hotel room, my hands shaking more than his. The competition was held at Stuyvesant High School. Huge stone building, intimidatingly elegant. The kind of place that seems to hum with legacy. Mason looked around wide-eyed, but not nervous. Not yet. The gymnasium was transformed into a proper hall. Judges in suits, rows of folding chairs, signs with neatly printed school names. Kids rehearsing in corners. Parents murmuring politely. It smelled like nerves and new shoes. Mason's team was slotted third. His topic, the ethical role of artificial intelligence in government decision-making. It was tough. Dry. Technical. But he'd spent weeks on it, digging into research, refining every line. He even practiced maintaining eye contact while talking, a struggle for him. He was calm that morning. Focused. He hummed under his breath before they called his name, something he did when trying to steady himself. I kissed the top of his head and whispered, "You've already won, you know." He nodded. Then I left him with his team and walked into the hall to find a seat. I wish I hadn't. I wish I'd stayed by him. Stood next to him. Anything to stop what I saw in that hallway. It was during the break. Kids were scattered in groups. Coaches checked their clipboards. The mood was electric and tense. That's when I saw her, Veronica. She was tall, thin, too polished for 13. She had a perfect braid and a navy blue blazer from Horace Mann. She was standing with two boys, both holding bottled green tea like props in some teen version of Succession. They were laughing. Not laughing, mocking. Veronica was mimicking Mason's stutter. She exaggerated his cadence, wrinkled her nose, said, "Dee, does he even understand what he's saying?" and cackled. One of the boys added, "It's like listening to a broken chatbot read a Wikipedia article." They laughed harder. My stomach dropped. I don't remember backing away. I don't remember walking back into the auditorium. But I know I sat down shaking. And I wondered, what if Mason heard? What if, right before the biggest moment of his life so far, he'd been humiliated by people who didn't know him at all? When they called him to the podium, I searched his face for any sign. His walk was steady, but slower. He took the mic. His opening line stumbled. Not badly, but enough. There was a chuckle somewhere behind me. Not loud. Not cruel. But sharp. Mason's eyes flicked up, locked onto something in the crowd. And for a moment, just a second, I saw it. That fragile belief wavering. Then he took a breath. A deep one. And continued. He slowed down. Not because he lost his place, but because he chose to. He spoke each sentence like it mattered. Like the weight of his research, of his practice, of his voice, deserved time. Deserved space. Mason didn't try to speed through the hard parts. When his tongue caught on a complicated phrase, he didn't rush. He paused. Steadied. Repeated it, carefully. Clearly. And that's when I noticed something else. The room had gone still. He wasn't the most eloquent speaker there. His delivery wasn't dramatic or polished. But it was real. Earnest. You could feel that he cared about the topic. He wasn't just arguing a side, he believed in it. And he was brave enough to deliver it with the voice he had, not the one others thought he should. He finished with a quiet but firm conclusion, folded his note card, and returned to his seat. The applause came slow at first. Then it picked up. Judges nodded. A few murmurs of approval rippled through the rows. But what happened next is what's etched into my memory like a scar. Each judge gave their feedback. Polite. Constructive. Encouraging. Then the guest judge, a tall, soft-spoken man named Louis Crane, reached for his mic. He hesitated, then took it off and stepped forward, holding it in his hand like it was suddenly too heavy to wear. He looked at Mason, who blinked up at him, guarded. And then Mr. Crane said, "When I was 12, I couldn't say my own name in front of strangers without stuttering. I used to hide in the bathroom during presentations. I felt broken. Like something was wrong with me." The room was silent. "But I wasn't broken," he continued, voice even. "I just needed time. And space. And patience. And when I finally stopped trying to sound like everyone else and started talking like myself, people listened." He glanced toward the back of the room. I don't know if he saw Veronica or if it was just coincidence, but his next words hit like a blade wrapped in velvet. "And for those in this room who find it amusing to mock someone's speech, it's easy to laugh. It takes nothing. No courage. No effort. But to stand in front of your peers, knowing they might laugh, and to speak anyway? That takes everything." He nodded to Mason. "You did that today. And I want you to know, your voice is strong. And worth hearing." My hands trembled in my lap. I didn't cry. Not yet. But I knew I would, as soon as I was alone. After the round, Mason didn't say much. He collected his things. Shook hands with teammates. Gave his coach a tired smile. He didn't win top speaker, Veronica did, somehow, but it didn't matter. Because in that moment, he didn't need a medal. He'd already won something else, dignity. Later, in the car, when he admitted he had heard them mocking him, I felt the burn of helplessness again. I reached for his hand, but he was already looking out the window. And then, almost to himself, he said, "I'm glad he said that." The judge. I didn't know grown-ups remembered what it was like. I didn't have a response. Just squeezed his hand. We drove in silence for a while. The sun was setting over the city skyline, traffic inching forward like molasses. Somewhere on the radio, a jazz song played softly. When we got back to the hotel, Mason didn't want to talk about it anymore. He asked if we could get pizza and watch Mythbusters. So we did. The next morning, we packed up and headed home. Back in Colony, life returned to normal. School. Chores. Therapy sessions. But something had shifted in Mason. Not everything, but enough. He started volunteering to read in class. Joined Model UN. Even signed up to help coach younger kids in speech prep. And once, when a 7th grader made fun of another boy's stutter in the cafeteria, Mason stood up and said, "You sound stupid when you laugh at stuff like that." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult back. Just said it, then sat down again. The other boy never bothered anyone again. A few weeks ago, Mason was invited to speak at a community literacy event at the library. Just a short segment, about what books meant to him. He wore the same thrift store blazer. It barely fit anymore, he's grown 2 inches since, but he said it felt lucky. He opened with a quote from To Slaughter a Mockingbird. His voice still stuttered, just a little. But nobody laughed. Not a soul. When we got home that night, I found his note cards in the trash. I pulled them out to save them. On the back of the last one, written in his crooked, left-handed scrawl, was this: "My voice is still mine, even when it shakes." That one line made all the worry, all the heartbreak, all the nights lying awake listening to him cry behind the bathroom door, worth it. And now, sitting here in the quiet, I keep thinking about how many kids go through this. About how many parents want to protect them, to fix it, but can't. Because sometimes the world is cruel in small, quiet ways. Sometimes the world sneers in a hallway when no one's supposed to hear. And sometimes, if you're lucky, someone will take off their mic, speak from the heart, and remind you that broken doesn't mean worthless. That struggle doesn't mean failure. Sometimes a voice, even a trembling one, can change the whole room. Mason started sleeping with his door slightly open after the debate. He never said why, but I didn't ask. It wasn't a fear thing, I think it was just openness. Like he wanted the world to know he wasn't hiding anymore. That was new. His teachers began sending notes home. Not the usual ones we'd get early on, about participation struggles or reading aloud accommodations. No, these were different. Mason led the discussion today. He stayed after class to help a classmate who was nervous about presenting. And my favorite, he asked to volunteer as timekeeper during the spring showcase. There was no dramatic transformation. This isn't one of those stories where the quiet kid becomes prom king or lands a Netflix deal. Mason still stutters. Still clams up sometimes when strangers ask him questions too fast. He still hates ordering at the drive-thru. But there was a quiet pride now. He stood straighter. He asked questions out loud during family dinner. He rolled his eyes when I teared up at little milestones, but he didn't stop me. One afternoon, a few weeks after the debate finals, we were grocery shopping, just grabbing a few things before dinner. I was checking expiration dates on a pack of strawberries when I heard someone call his name. It was one of the boys from the finals. The one who laughed at him in the hallway. I recognized him immediately, trimmed hair, fancy sneakers, the air of someone too used to getting away with things. He hesitated before speaking. Hey, Mason, right? Mason stiffened. Didn't respond at first. He was holding a box of granola bars, and I could see his fingers tighten around it. The boy shifted awkwardly. You were, really good at that debate thing. At finals. Mason blinked. Thanks. The boy nodded, glanced at me, then back at Mason. I, shouldn't have laughed. Back then. My friend was being a jerk. I kinda just went along. Mason said nothing. Just looked at him. And then, calmly, you still laughed. The boy opened his mouth, but Mason had already turned to me. Can we go now? I nodded. We walked away, neither of us speaking until we were in the car. I started the engine, glanced over. Mason was staring ahead, expression unreadable. You okay? I asked. He shrugged. He only said something because he was embarrassed. I nodded slowly. Maybe. Or maybe he meant it. Mason didn't answer. He just said, doesn't really matter. And I realized then, it didn't. Because for all the hours we'd spent working through therapy and practicing speeches and rebuilding confidence brick by brick, the real victory wasn't in the applause or the attention. It was in that exact moment. Mason stood in front of someone who once laughed at him and didn't shrink. Didn't explain. Didn't try to smooth it over to make the other person comfortable. He just owned his worth and walked away. Later that evening, while I chopped vegetables in the kitchen, he came in and leaned against the counter. You know, I used to think I'd be happy if people just stopped noticing me. I turned, waiting. But now I think I'd rather be noticed for the right things. Even if it means they hear me stutter. There it was again. That shift. That truth he was discovering on his own. I didn't tell him how profound that was. I just smiled, handed him a carrot stick, and said, well, I always notice when you leave the dishes in the sink. He rolled his eyes, but he was smiling. A few days after that, his coach emailed me. Mr. Price was a man of few words, which made his messages all the more meaningful. It simply read, Mason gave one of the younger kids a pep talk today before practice. Thought you'd like to know. He used the phrase words don't have to come fast to come strong. That night, Mason casually mentioned he wanted to help organize a student speaker series at school. Like a storytelling thing? I asked. Kind of. Like open mic, but less pressure. Just a space where people talk about stuff that's hard. Not for grades. Not for claps. Just to say it out loud. And there it was again. He wasn't just using his voice. He was making room for others to use theirs. Even now, weeks later, I think back to that judge. To the moment he removed his mic and said what I, as Mason's mother, always wanted someone else to say that this struggle, this sometimes invisible, sometimes humiliating fight to be heard, is seen. And that the ones who keep talking, even when it's hard, are the bravest among us. Sometimes I wonder if Mr. Crane knew how deeply his words landed. If he understood what he gave my son in that moment, not just validation, but a kind of permission. To exist fully. To take up space. Because Mason does now. In ways both big and quiet. He takes up space when he stands to speak, even if his first few words shake. He takes up space when he gently corrects people who interrupt or finish his sentences. And he takes up space when he reminds others, without lecturing, without shouting, that every voice has value, no matter what it sounds like. Mason's student speaker series got approved faster than I expected. Principal Hartwell, a sharp but fair woman in her early 60s, known for her precise blazers and no-nonsense tone, called me one morning. She left a voicemail. "Mrs. Holbrook, your son presented a proposal to the faculty board today. Very articulate. Very organized. I'd like to commend you. And him. We're excited to support the Student Voice Initiative." I played the message back 3 times. That week, Mason stayed up late every night sketching ideas in his notebook, title cards, poster designs, a list of themes for each month. Real talk, he called it. The first topic, being afraid to speak. He never said it was about him. But it was. He got other students involved, some from his debate team, a few quiet kids from the library crowd, even a girl who rarely talked in class but agreed to help manage sign-ups. It wasn't flashy. Just a mic, a stool, and a circle of chairs in the band room after school on Thursdays. But it grew fast. By the 3rd week, over 30 students were attending. Teachers began stopping by. Some parents, too. And Mason? He started each session with a 5-minute opener. No notes. No cards. Just thoughts. He still stuttered. He still paused mid-sentence sometimes. But now, he smiled when it happened. Gave the moment space. Owned it. The first time I sat in on a session, he was sharing a story about how he used to hate class popcorn reading so much, he would fake needing the bathroom. He said, "I didn't hate reading. I hated how fast I was supposed to go. Like words had to sprint out of me to count." The room chuckled gently, and he let the laughter settle before continuing. "But now I kind of think, maybe it's not the speed that makes your voice strong. Maybe it's the reason you're speaking at all." I sat in the back, behind a few parents, blinking away tears. And then, one day, the email came. It was from the State Student Speech Association. They were hosting a new storytelling-style competition, less formal, less structured than debate. They were piloting a new format where kids could speak on personal experiences that shaped their lives. Each region could nominate one student. Mason had been chosen. I stared at the email for a long time before calling him into the kitchen. He read it over my shoulder, silent. Then he asked, "Do I have to?" I blinked. "Only if you want to." He looked down at his hands, thumbs tracing each other. "I don't know what I'd even say." "You'll figure it out," I told him. And he did. For 2 weeks, he worked on his story. Alone this time. He didn't want help. He didn't read it aloud to me. Just scribbled pages, crossed out entire paragraphs, stared out the window for long stretches. On the night before the event, he handed me a folded paper. "Can you read it after I'm done tomorrow?" he asked. "Why not now?" He shrugged. "It'll make me more nervous if you already know it." The event was held at SUNY Albany, in a small auditorium that smelled of chalk dust and new paint. The crowd was quiet. No flashy lights or dramatic music. Just a spotlight, a single mic, and rows of folding chairs. Mason was third in the lineup. His name was called, and he stepped out, blazer wrinkled from the car ride, hair slightly messy from the wind. He didn't fidget. He didn't shuffle his papers nervously. He just stood there. Then he spoke. His voice shook on the first word. A pause. Then another breath. And then, clear as day, when I was younger, I believed my voice didn't belong in certain rooms. Because it didn't sound like other people's. Because it sometimes stopped before it finished. Because people looked uncomfortable when I spoke. He told them about hiding in bathroom stalls. About speech therapy. About a debate final in Manhattan where he almost gave up. And then he told them about a judge. A man who took off his mic and told the room, that was me at 12 too. You could have heard a pin drop. He ended by saying, I still stutter. I probably always will. But I don't wait for it to go away anymore. I use it anyway. Because it's mine. There was silence. And then, applause. Not polite. Not scattered. Real. Full. People stood. Later that night, after we got home and he went upstairs, I unfolded his speech and read it again. I read it 3 times. And that line kept ringing in my ears, I use it anyway. Because it's mine. A few days later, something unexpected happened. I got a message request on Facebook from someone I didn't recognize at first. Her name was familiar, though, Veronica's mother. It was short, Hi Simone, I wanted to reach out because my daughter saw your son speak at the SUNY event. She came home quiet. Said she felt ashamed of how she treated him last year. I don't know what happened exactly, but she asked me to help her find a speech therapist. Thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't reply right away. Part of me didn't know what to say. But then I showed it to Mason. He read it. Sat with it. Then said, good. I hope she finds her voice too. He didn't ask to talk about it again. He had math homework to finish. A Thursday speaker session to prep. A little sister to walk home from school the next day. The world kept moving. But I kept that message. Just like I kept that wrinkled blazer. That ketchup-stained scarf. That folded note card that said, my voice is still mine, even when it shakes. Because this isn't just a story about bullies or debate wins or standing ovations. It's about something bigger. And I'll tell you the rest of it, if you'd like me to keep going. Mason never sought revenge. Not in the way people think of it, anyway. He never raised his voice at the kids who laughed behind his back, never called them out by name in a speech, never embarrassed them publicly. That wasn't who he was. But life has a funny way of giving people exactly what they deserve, not always loudly, not always immediately, but with the kind of quiet precision that leaves no doubt it was earned. It was almost a year after the debate finals. Mason was now in 8th grade, getting ready for high school. His confidence had grown, but it hadn't turned into arrogance. He still stuttered sometimes. He still hesitated when reading new words aloud. But he never apologized for it. And the student speaker series? It had turned into a full school event. Once a month, the library transformed into a low-lit stage, with teachers and students alike gathering to hear personal stories, poetry, essays, confessions. Kids who had barely spoken in class were now volunteering to stand at the mic. The local news did a feature on it. Mason was interviewed, awkwardly, but honestly, on camera. That's when things came full circle. The Horace Mann School, the same one Veronica attended, reached out to our school to collaborate on a joint student event. Something their student council initiated to bridge communication and create space for shared youth expression. It sounded nice. But I could smell the PR spin on it. The truth? Their school had seen the feature. They'd read the glowing parent letters. The real talk sessions had spread online. And Mason, my son, who once avoided eye contact in group projects, was now known as the founder of something real. Their school wanted in. Principal Hartwell agreed to a joint showcase. Students from both schools would prepare talks on the theme, What I Used to Believe. Mason was chosen to co-host. Of course he was. The event was held in a community arts center in Tarrytown. Beautiful place, arched ceilings, creaky floorboards, paper lanterns hanging from rafters. It had the vibe of something both ancient and hopeful. I didn't realize who the first student speaker from Horace Mann was until she stepped onto the stage. Veronica. She'd grown a few inches, her face more serious, no trace of the smugness I remembered. She adjusted the mic with trembling fingers, scanned the crowd, and began to speak. When I was younger, she said, I believed that confidence looked like perfection. I thought people had to speak quickly and smoothly to be worth listening to. She paused. I believed that if someone stuttered, it meant they were nervous. Or stupid. Or both. And I laughed at people who didn't talk like me. Especially one person. She didn't name him. She didn't have to. The room was silent. No one shuffled. No phones buzzed. I don't think I've ever hated myself more than I did when I realized I had mocked someone for something I was secretly afraid of in myself. Because here's the truth, I have speech anxiety. I've had it for years. I've avoided presentations. Faked sick. I even skipped class once just to avoid reading a poem aloud. She took a breath. I used someone else's struggle as a way to hide from my own. And I'm sorry. Mason, standing at the edge of the stage waiting to introduce the next speaker, didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He didn't glare. He just watched. After her talk, Veronica walked off the stage and straight up to Mason. They exchanged a quiet handshake. No theatrics. No dramatic confrontation. Just an acknowledgement. Later, after the event, she came up to me. I'm sorry, she said, looking me in the eyes. For what I said. For what I did. You raised someone really strong. I nodded once. He got there mostly on his own. But thank you. And that was that. No grand retribution. No public shaming. No social media takedown. Just a girl, forced to face herself on the very stage she once believed she owned. That night, on the drive home, Mason stared out the window like he used to. I asked him if he was okay. Yeah, he said, quietly. That was good. You forgave her? I asked. He didn't answer right away. I didn't really need to, he finally said. She had to forgive herself. That's the hard part. He looked over at me. I didn't win a trophy that day at the finals. But I got something better. What's that? He shrugged, a soft smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. She didn't take anything from me. I nodded slowly, letting the weight of that settle between us. And it hit me then, that was the revenge. Not bitterness. Not cruelty. But resilience. She had to live with the memory of mocking someone who became a voice others now looked up to. She had to speak her shame into the same mic he once feared. She had to do what he had already done, stand in his shoes. And she stumbled. But Mason didn't. He stood. He spoke. And the world listened.